Hey guys, this is Matt, and today I'm going to talk about The Flash Season 1, Episode 21, titled Grodd Lives. This was a pretty great episode. I want to run through some things that I really liked about it in no certain order. Be careful for spoilers. If you have not yet seen the episode, pause this, go watch it, come back, you'll be glad you did. But let's just jump right into it. The first one being that Iris confronts Barry about him being the Flash. So this is really great because they did not drag this out. So at the end of the last episode, Iris, she touched the Flash's hand. She felt that spark that she felt when she touched Barry's hand when he was in the coma. And that's kind of when she realized. And last week I said how that was kind of cliche. And it's like when the girl kisses the superhero and then kisses the secret identity. And then she puts two and two together. And this was kind of the same thing as that. So it was a little cliche. But the thing that wasn't cliche about it was the fact that that they didn't drag this out. I kind of thought that, oh man, now it's going to be another season of she knows, but Barry doesn't know that she knows, and she's going to be sort of skirting around the issue. Nope. Just a few minutes into the episode, she walked right up to him in Star Labs when he's in the suit with the hood pulled back. Caitlin and Cisco are in there too, and she just flat out confronts him about it, and she is pissed. And to be honest, I don't really blame her. Pretty much everybody lied to her about everything. They lied to her about, or they not really lie, but they didn't tell her that Barry was the Flash. They didn't tell her that Eddie knew, that Joe knew, that really anybody knew. And they also didn't tell her. One thing she was pissed about was that that Joe didn't tell her how Barry really felt about her. Although I thought he did tell her at some point, and she flat out rejected him. But maybe. I guess her point about that was nobody told her up until Barry did. I'm not sure, but the point is she's been kind of left in the dark, and if you think about it, how everybody around her knew everything, she probably felt like a fool, and she really shouldn't, because it's not her fault that nobody told her, nobody trusts her with anything. I've always hated that whole thing of, oh, I can't tell you, or I can't tell the person I care about to protect them. I don't see how them not knowing keeps them safe. If your enemies find out who you really are, they're going to go after your loved ones, whether they know who you are or not. And long story short, she didn't drag it out. She confronted him. The whole episode, they went back and forth the whole episode about, you didn't tell me, and you should have told me, and I know I'm sorry I lied to you, that kind of stuff. But at least it didn't get dragged out. Thank goodness. One quick thing I really enjoyed was good old Clancy Brown. They had him locked up in the prison underneath Starro Labs because Grodd had taken over his mind and he was trying to steal some gold. They locked him up in the prison, but then they go to talk to him, and instead of Clancy Brown, we get Clancy Brown channeling Grodd, which was awesome. He sounded kind of like you would think Grodd would sound, and he wasn't speaking in full sentences. He was speaking sort of gorilla-like, whatever that sounds like. I don't know. But that was fun to see him be that way, because he was really convincing. He was really convincing that a telepathic gorilla had taken over his mind. Yeah, as convincing as that can be, he pulled it off. There was a great moment with Caitlin and Iris, just sort of bonding. It didn't last very long, but it was when Joe and Barry and Cisco went down to the sewers to try to track down Grodd. Caitlin and Iris were left up in Star Labs, and they had a quick little moment talking about, well, Iris started putting everything together, and she sort of deduced, and Caitlin sort of told her about Ronnie being, quote unquote, the man on fire. So that it was nice to see the two of them talking. I've always liked scenes with them together, and they don't really get a lot of them. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Nyssa and Laurel scene in last week's Arrow. So these two characters are both great. They don't get a lot of screen time together, so it's nice to see them sort of bond. And it's nice to see Iris just start learning things. Just start learning, about Barry, about Ronnie, about Wells, about everything, to finally let her in and get her out of the dark. I enjoyed seeing that. A great thing about this episode was Cisco's several movie references. He referenced Chud. He referenced ROUS's, Rodents of Unusual Size from Princess Bride. That was really cool. Not a lot of people know that one. He referenced Jurassic Park. I think there was a Planet of the Apes reference in there. There's quick little movie references, but they're really fun. Basically, Cisco, I was thinking about this. Cisco is us. Cisco is the viewer. Cisco is he says all the things that we're all thinking. We all sort of apply everything we see in the Flash to, or not apply, but compare it to other things that we've seen and other things we've experienced. And Cisco does that same thing for us. He's kind of the voice of the viewer, which makes him a fantastic character. So hopefully we'll get a lot more of that kind of stuff in these next 2 episodes. Probably the biggest thing to talk about in this episode, though, was Grodd himself. For being a CGI gorilla on TV, on a TV budget, and in the CW of all places, Grodd looked fantastic. He looked great. He was really pretty scary. He got up. There was a time when he kidnapped Joe, brought him down to the sewer, and there were several times when he got up in Joe's face and just roared at him, and it was pretty. I mean, it was pretty menacing, and it looked, obviously. I mean, you could tell it's CG, but like I said, for TV, it looked really, really good. I like the fact that they had him walking upright instead of sort of using his hands like gorillas do. That was kind of a nice, because I think he does that in the comics, so it's a nice sort of it was nice being faithful to that. I kind of wish that he talked in full sentences, though. I mentioned a moment ago that Clancy Brown's character didn't talk in full sentences because he was channeling Grodd, and Grodd didn't either. And Grodd's supposed to be super intelligent, so I kind of expected him to come out just spouting off paragraphs, but he didn't. I attribute that maybe to the fact that I guess he's still evolving. As they're going through the sewer, they see what's essentially hieroglyphics, and they start off as scratches on the wall, and they get to some small words and some small pictures, and by the end of it, they get to the tunnel, they see equations and things like that. So, and they even mention the fact that he's getting smarter and evolving. So maybe if we see him in a future episode, I'm sure we will, because he did not die at the end of this, given the last scene where he climbed up the building and then jumped off. We'll see him again, so maybe we'll see him evolve more. But bravo to the CW and the writers and the producers and the showrunners and directors and cast and everybody for pulling off a CGI gorilla on CW. I actually never thought we'd see it when they first announced The Flash. Of course, Grodd is one of the Flash's greatest villains. I just never thought it would happen, and it did, and it worked, and I can't wait to see more of that. And the last thing I really want to bring up is the interaction between Eddie and Wells. I really like seeing the two of them together because, again, they're two characters who don't get a lot of screen time. I like how Eddie stayed really brave the whole time. He was tied to a chair the entire episode. I don't know how long he had been down there, but he stayed brave. He didn't cower down to Wells. When Wells was trying to tell him about being from the future, Eddie just said he didn't believe him and thought he was crazy. But then, speaking of that, Wells started telling Eddie a lot about the future, which I thought was rule number 1 in all of time travel lore and law, is you don't tell anybody about the future. But Wells said, screw that. He was telling him that he was the only forgettable member of the Thawne lineage. That basically it's a prestigious family. He comes from a prestigious lineage, but that Eddie himself was the only one who wasn't memorable. He told Eddie about Iris marrying Barry, that he didn't get the girl, just all kinds of stuff that I wouldn't think that you should do it. Of course, then again, Wells is kind of a bad dude, or Eobard, I guess. He's kind of a bad dude. He just wants to get back to his time. So he doesn't really care what's going to happen. But it seems like, especially if I'm talking to my ancestor, I don't want to tell them anything in case they change their mind about something, which leads me to my theory, my official theory on what's going to happen with Eddie and Wells. You heard it here first. If it comes out to be true, then you're welcome. Get out of my head, writers, because this is what's going to happen. So I think, and I mentioned this a little last week, but I think that Wells telling Eddie that he was forgettable, that he had a lackluster police career, that he doesn't marry Iris, I think that Eddie is going to end up killing himself or sacrificing himself in some way so that Eobard Thawne is never born. So what happens is, if Eobard is never born, he never comes back to our time. He never kills the real Harrison Wells, and he never causes trouble for Team Flash. by doing this, they can still let Tom Cavanaugh as Harrison Wells be on the show next season because everybody loves him. He's a great character. He's a great actor. We don't want to lose him. But if he's the bad guy, what are you going to do with him? So I think that Eddie kills himself, sacrifices himself. Eobard doesn't exist, which means the original Harrison Wells doesn't die. The only kink in my theory is that if Harrison Wells, the real Harrison Wells, lives, according to the episode a few weeks back, he actually doesn't create the particle accelerator for like another 10 years after it originally exploded. So how would that still give birth to the Flash if it doesn't happen? So that's the only thing that I'm not sure of. But you see where I'm going with this. I mean, if you take out Eobard, then none of this other bad stuff happens, and everything just happens normally. And maybe that's a cliffhanger. Maybe we're left all summer to wonder, hey, how is Barry going to become the Flash if Eobard didn't create the particle accelerator early? Anyway, so it's not perfect, but that's kind of what I think is going to happen, or some variation on that. So remember, when it happens, you heard it here first. So those are my favorite things from this week's episode. There was a lot of other good stuff. We got to see a preview. So apparently next week is the crossover episode with Arrow and Firestorm, and they try to take on Reverse Flash, I think with the aid of Captain Cold as well. So that's going to be really, really good. But this episode, as a sort of a standalone thing with Grodd, was really great. I kind of wish that Grodd would have been more of a central character. So I look forward to seeing him again in the future when he can be the absolute main villain of the episode, rather than just kind of being a side character and something to distract the team while Harrison Wells does his thing. So that'll be a lot of fun, because I think there's a lot they can do with Grodd. So definitely glad they didn't kill him off. Definitely glad he'll be coming back around again. But yeah, so if I didn't mention anything that you thought was cool, be sure to leave them in the comments below. And in the meantime, if you want to check out all the rest of the stuff that the Nerd Punch crew is doing, just follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube, all of those /Nerd Punch. Go to nerdpunch.com to see our schedule of things that we're doing during the week. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.